So, I don't think I'll be making this video. I've done this so many times, but here we are. We're here, and I'm going to tell you the story. Before I get into it, I just wanted to explain some things, wanted to share with you guys some important information. At any point in this video, if you feel triggered or if you've gone through what I've gone through and you're confused and you want some more advice or just some more information on it, then please feel free to use the links I've put down below, along with some numbers as well for you guys. I have been guided to use these links by the nurse that I had spoken to. I didn't think I'd be here, but here I am today. I'm here talking to you about my miscarriage. Never in a million years did I think I'd be doing this type of video, but here I am, talking to you right now. Let's start from the beginning. We had been trying for a baby since July. I had my implant removed, I had migraines, other stuff like that. So I had my implant removed and we thought, let's just try for another baby. After 4 cycles, each cycle was different. We tried different things. So if we didn't conceive one cycle, we'll try something different. Whether that was increasing the conceiving part or whether it was trying a supplement or whether it was trying foods. We literally tried everything. On our 4th cycle in November, I got pregnant. I found out I was pregnant at 9 DPO, which is days past ovulation. I took a digital pregnancy test at 12 DPO. I was so full of fear but excitement. I wanted to be able to do this pregnancy differently for Mason because it was so traumatic, my labour and the whole idea of labour and stuff. So I wanted to do things differently this time round. I decided to go for a private scan. I went when I was 6 weeks. Well, I supposed I was 6 weeks. Turned out that I was 5 weeks. They messaged me a week early, which was odd, but they did that because they couldn't find a fetal pole, which at 6 weeks you should be able to see a fetal pole. And because you're supposed to have the egg yolk sac and the fetal pole together, there was nothing there. It was just the egg yolk sac. They said come back next week, and I did. I came back the next week and I was 6 weeks 2 days. There was a fetal pole, so everything was healthy. The fetus was healthy. There was nothing to be worried about. There was this slight thing in the back of my head that felt like something wasn't right because my dates just weren't adding up, but I put that beside me and I just moved on. I experienced normal pregnancy symptoms, nausea, headaches, backache, cramping, the whole lot you can imagine. Nausea was worse this time around. I managed that with my folic acid. I was taking B6 to help with the nausea. And I was taking my iron supplements because my iron was low because I wasn't eating enough. But we moved on. Turned out to be Christmas. We was going down to see some family. And we told our family, obviously I told my parents and Andrew told his parents prior. And our whole family was just overwhelmed and so happy for us. And we told extended family, just all the family and the friends that we wanted to tell before we told the world at 12 weeks. After Christmas, I went in for my 8 weeks. You go for your 8 weeks normal clinic appointment at your hospital or your community centre, whichever you go to, and they do the basic, the history, they take your blood, your urine, your weight, your height, the all usual procedures that they do. I never had anything back, so I assumed baby was fine. And around 10 weeks, I went to the GP because I had some high blood pressure issues. I had a machine at home, and I used that machine when I was pregnant with Mason during my last trimester. I had some issues. So when I was at my 8 weeks appointment, the midwife had explained to me she wanted me to take aspirin, and I said, no, I don't want to take aspirin. And it's completely your choice if you want to take aspirin or not. If you are offered aspirin, don't feel like you have to take it because they've advised you to take it. You can say no, but there is obviously consequences if you do and if you don't take it. So just think about them pros and cons. But obviously they don't just give out aspirin. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse or whatever professional. I'm just going by what I've experienced. So always talk to your provider or your midwife. But it was about 10 weeks. I went to the GP and I had some issues with my blood pressure. And I had some burning when I was going to the loo, so I thought, oh, I'll just go in, it might be a UTI, get some antibiotics and I'll be straight out of there. And I went there, she was so lovely, she was pregnant herself, she was so lovely, the doctor, and she took my urine samples, she checked it as they usually do with the sticks, and it came up as, obviously, UTI markers were up, and I had sources of protein in my urine, which was odd. And for me, from the research that I've done, protein in your urine is not supposed to be there. She said, I questioned her about it, and she said, well, sometimes it can happen with UTI. It can present proteins in your urine. I said, oh, okay. I questioned her about my blood pressure. She said it was fine as long as it's not over 130s, it's okay. I said, okay, cool, nothing to worry about. So I definitely felt confident enough to know that saying no to aspirin was okay. But obviously I still had the nick in the back of my brain that maybe I should have, but we can't go by ifs. I did see the proteins as a red flag, but I pushed it aside. I didn't really think much of it because I just thought it was just the UTI playing up with me, because I suffer with UTIs quite a lot, so I just ignored it, and I had my antibiotics and I was on my way. I had antibiotics for a week. The burning stopped, thank God. But after 2 days of finishing them antibiotics, something strange happened. I'd noticed a few things. This was about 11 weeks, 2 days. I'd gone to the loo in the afternoon after I just picked Mace up from nursery and put down for a nap. I'd gone to the loo and I noticed some dark brown discharge. Obviously, when you see things like that, things in your head go crazy, all these possibilities, and you start worrying. And so I called up the triage and they said, what are your symptoms? I said I had some cramping, but I thought it was just growing pains, because that can happen. You can have growing pains, it's completely normal. And I had some brown dark discharge, and she said that could be completely normal as well. But she said, because your rhesus negative, we want you to come in, have your anti-D injection. And she said, we'll get you in for a scan tomorrow to see if everything's okay, and a cervical check. I said, okay, cool. And she said, keep an eye on it. Any other symptoms you experience, just give us a ring. I said, cool, sweet, whatever. Later on that evening, Andrew had just gone out for a run. I'd made myself a cup of tea, sat down on the sofa, I needed a wee again. And obviously I hadn't been to the toilet since the discharge, and maybe about 4 or 5 hours. I'd noticed more blood, but it was dark brown. It wasn't discharged this time, it was different. And obviously I had more worry. I started to cry because I thought something was wrong. And I just didn't want to trust my intuition, so I just called up triage. I said, look, I'm bleeding some more, I don't know what to do. And she said, right, I'll get a nurse to call, I'll get a triage nurse to call you. I said, okay, cool. I waited for the triage nurse. This was about 7 o'clock I called them, and she called me back about 10. So assuming they were very, very busy. And she said, right, we want you to come in now to have some bloods done and that cervical check instead of tomorrow. I said, okay, cool. So I went in, got in an Uber, went in, she took my bloods, she did my vitals, everything was fine, but my blood pressure was normal, my temperature was normal. Then I was then called into the room to have a check done, and when I tell you it was the most painful experience, I mean, it was painful. Like, wow. I'd had cervical checks done before, even during my pregnancy with Maze, and oh my God, it never hurt this bad. When she was touching my cervix with the swab, it was like needles, it was horrendous. But she said that after we had done the checks, she had said that there was a streak of blood going across my cervix, but when she did the test of me coughing to see if obviously my cervix was producing blood after I'd coughed, it's like a reflex. There wasn't any coming out when I was coughing out of my cervix, but it is coming from my cervix, she said, but it's from the inside, so where baby is. I said, okay, cool. So she said, we'll go for the scan tomorrow. And for me, I just took the impression that I was just being paranoid, that I was just being a paranoid hormonal pregnant woman that was just overthinking things, and that this was just normal. The next day was a day that changed my life. It was the day I would not like to remember ever again, but I learnt from it. I learnt a lot from that day, and I will take everything that I've learnt from that day and I'll use it forward and foremost in the future. I actually went for my scan. I sat and I waited, and I was just there talking to myself, trying to prep myself and cheerleading myself, essentially. Say everything's okay, we're all good, we're going to go in there, we're going to be fine. And then obviously there was this man in there that got some food, and it was horrible, and it made me feel sick. It made the girl behind me feel sick. And I was calling for my scan. I went in and said, look, I want loads of pictures. I was on my own then. Obviously Andrew couldn't come, but his work is behind the hospital, so he could come whenever he could. And I went and said, look, I want loads of pictures, I want loads. And she did the scan on my belly. She said, I can't see anything. So I had to go internally. I said, okay. I thought that was a bit weird, that you can't see anything, and I would have been 11 weeks, like 3 days or 4 days then. So surely you would have seen something on my belly. But she went in, and the words I will never forget that came out of her mouth. And honestly, I don't know how they have the courage to say it, but the words she had said were, I'm so sorry, there is no heartbeat. And to be able to hear them words come out of a professional's mouth, you just feel like you're imagining it. And that's how I felt at that moment of time. I felt like I was just imagining the whole experience. I was just like, are you joking? Is this a joke? She said, I'll get someone in just to double check. And the person came in and she said, no, definitely there is no heartbeat, and your baby's measuring at 8 weeks. So your baby had passed away and stopped growing at 8 weeks. I said, oh, okay. She spoke to me about the option after I'd got up and got changed. She gave me 3 options: about 1 tablet I can have at hospital, and then I can have 2 I can take home, have 1 at hospital and then have 1 at home, or I can have a procedure. I picked the procedure. So she said, right, we'll book you in for Monday, because they don't do them on the weekends anymore. Before I left, I literally called my mom, I called my friend, I told my friend over WhatsApp, and it was just something that I told my best mate, and I just broke. I felt like a part of me broke, and I don't know what happened. I just felt like I lost myself. I felt like everything was my fault because I didn't recognise anything. I didn't think, I was thinking, oh, what if it was the supplements that I was taking? Or what if it's because I didn't take the aspirin? What if it's the aspirin? I was really blaming myself. But we went home, and usually at this point, you'd have mums already, wanting to enjoy the time with their baby in their womb. To be honest with you, I didn't. I wanted, because it had already gone, and knowing that my body is still carrying something but hasn't recognised it is a strange feeling for me. That's just my opinion. And I find it's bizarre that you'd have to go home knowing that your baby has passed in your womb and you're still carrying it. And I find it even more bizarre the fact that my body hasn't recognised it. And this is where it gets crazier. So I went home that evening, go pick up Mace from nursery, and I sit down, we get a takeaway, we chill. It was about 12 o'clock at night. Mason had just jumped into our beds, and I had this excruciating pain. I was bleeding some more, and I was starting to clot a little bit. It was like my body was starting the process. It was like wanted me to know before it had started the process. It was weird. It was such a weird experience, and I just felt like my body was waiting to start the process. It wanted me to know first. It was almost like it was prepping me for the whole experience. I called up the unit and I explained what happened, and they wanted me to come in as soon as possible. So I got in an Uber again. Yeah, the pain was like I was going into labour pain. It was like I was going into labour. It was horrendous. I was swaying, I was doing circles, I was crouching, I was circling my hips like I was on a ball. It was like I was in labour to help the contractions. But I had codeine. They gave me a codeine. They said, look, have this codeine. If it doesn't work within half an hour, then, we'll admit you. And obviously it didn't work. So I was admitted onto the ward, and They gave me some morphine because I was in more pain. I was having more clots. It was just so excruciatingly painful. It's an experience I don't want anybody to go through. The morphine was quite a weird experience, I'm not gonna lie, I never had morphine before. They just sort of gave it to me, like a liquid like morphine, and I just had it all in one rather than just a bit at a time because I ended up being shaky. I'll show you how shaky I was. It was crazy. And I said to the nurse, I was panicking, I was like, something's wrong. And she was like, nothing's wrong. You just took it all in one go, and you know, it's your first time with morphine, you need to just take it bit by bit. And I just said, look, someone should have told me that prior, but I was in so much pain, I just took it, and it worked, to be fair. It put me to sleep, actually. I think I slept. I was put on the ward about 2 a.m, not going to sleep till about 6 a.m. Ended up being the next day. Doctors came round about 9 o'clock and they said, right, we want to get you in for emergency D&C. They wanted me in for an emergency D&C that day. In the afternoon. I said, okay, cool. Ended up going for the procedure about 7 o'clock at night. I went. It was such a weird experience being on general anaesthetic, being put to sleep. It was like, I didn't want to open my eyes because I could feel myself going weird already, so I just sort of just drifted off myself. And then it was like 2 minutes later, I was awake. It was crazy. I was put back on the ward about 7:30, 8 o'clock. It's a very, very quick procedure. And then it was about 2 in the afternoon the next morning I was sent home. They gave me my anti-D. They sent me on my way because you have to have your anti-D anyway after you give birth or whatever if they suspect. I didn't have it there and then. I just had it after. I didn't have any heavy bleeding or anything after the surgery. It was just like spotting. I was completely fine. I couldn't wait to go home. So I went home at 2 o'clock that afternoon the next day. This was about Sunday. I went home. About 4 days after I got back, I had more bleeding, but it wasn't heavy, but it was normal, but it could just be me just overdoing it because I was back to cleaning my usual self. I think it was about 7 days or something like that. I started to test for HCG. It wasn't actually that high because I tested 4 days after and it was like black, like HCG strips. And then I took it on the Saturday, about a week after post-op, and it was like halfway, so I was like, okay, cool. And I took a digital. It said 2 to 3, so I thought, great, we're getting somewhere. And then I got a call on the Friday the week after, when I was just turning 2 weeks post-op. It was my results. And at this point, my HCG was already getting lighter, and they had told me that my tissue samples had come back as a partial molar pregnancy. But I had a partial molar pregnancy, which is where 2 sperm have gone through 1 egg, but there is just too much DNA. So 1 sperm is fertilized into the egg, but there's another sperm which has created too much DNA. It just all clashes basically with too much DNA and ends up creating bad cells in the placenta, which then can stop. And obviously your placenta gives your baby the nutrients that it needs to grow and develop. And obviously with that happening. But yeah, they took my tissue, looked at it under a microscope, and they said it was a partial molar pregnancy. This is just a genetic abnormality. So she basically told me that how my HCG was doing. And I said, it's going down, but it's not at 0. And she said, okay, so we'll get you in for a blood test the next day, which was the Saturday, which would have been 2 weeks. She said, well, we want to get a baseline to see how you're going, see where you're at. I said, okay. So I went in, I had my blood tests, I got my results the next day. They were at 104, which is still high, which is still a strong positive pregnancy, but it's going down now. But I've got to go back in 2 weeks' time for another blood test, which I'm hoping is good. Another thing that she was telling me is, she said, don't be scared. And I said, well, you're telling me not to be scared, so I'm going to be scared. She said, sometimes because of how rare a molar pregnancy is, especially a partial, you'd have to be referred to a specialist clinic to have more tests done. And this was because the cells that it had created from so much DNA, these cells can become cancerous and spread to other parts of the body. And obviously, if left untreated, it can cause the cancer that they've listed here. But she said not to worry because it can just, it is curable, but she said not to worry. She said if your HCG doesn't go down either, then you'll still be referred for the clinic. But if they do go down, then the clinic might just discharge you. I'm still trying to work my way around the whole molar pregnancy situation sort of thing because it's still confusing for me. I've listed all the things that I've explained to you today are listed in the Miscarriage Association link, which I've put down in the description for you guys to look at. So if any of you have experienced what I've gone through and are confused and still waiting to hear, then you're more than welcome to go and look at the link I've listed down here. If you feel like you want anybody to talk to, because I felt quite lonely during this time, but I had some friends that had gone through what I had went through. I had been advised not to try for any more babies until I get the all clear from the clinic. So I'm on strict instructions not to try for a baby. But yeah, everything I've listed, like definitions, facts and stuff in here to help me explain to you, which I hope I've explained something, but I've probably put it on the screen anyway. I'll let them all down below for you guys. And any questions you have, just literally drop me a message in the comments or my DMs on my socials. I've linked down below as well. Just I'll answer them in the next video. Well, thanks guys for listening to my story. It's not the story I wanted to share with you, but unfortunately it has happened. Again, my DMs are always open to anybody if you need any help or just somebody to talk to, because it can be quite lonely during this whole experience. But thank you guys for watching, and make sure you like, subscribe, and you press that little bell to be notified for any of my videos, and make sure you follow me on all my socials, including Instagram and TikTok.